This is GARIS, masculist. Just a minute. MGTOW flyers. On the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 397, entitled The Unconscious Arrogance of Monoconscious Feminists. Description. This flyer lashes out at the unconscious arrogance of monoconscious feminists who think that gender oppression is a one-way street, that women are morally superior to men for the ways that men oppress women, that women are just as intellectually capable as men. Biconscious masculists...
Sorry, I didn't understand, but I found something related. Do you...
That women are just as intellectually capable as men. Biconscious masculists, and particularly masculist scientists, will crush this biased monoconscious ignorance with their scientifically based proofs that women are genetically inferior to men at the top end of the performance and intellect scales. The flyer itself. The Unconscious Arrogance of Monoconscious Feminists by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. Just a minute, I'll make it a bit bigger. Recently, I watched an Australian movie on the history of the rise of second-wave feminism in Australia in the late 60s and early 70s. In it, one of the women, now in her 70s, as am I, made the comment, quote, "When I look at the young women of today and their level of self-confidence, I think it's wonderful." I remember thinking at the time that that level of self-confidence is to a large extent an unconscious arrogance that modern feminism has given them, a monoconscious feminism that is only half the gender political story, so that when these young women do become biconscious, that is, they have both their feminist and their masculist consciousnesses raised by being exposed to masculist ideas, which has not yet happened, but is about to, then they will lose their unconscious arrogance and become a lot more humble and realistic as masculist realities penetrate their monoconscious, feminist, brainwashed minds. I begin with an explanation as to why so many young women today are, from a masculist point of view, unconsciously arrogant. Imagine you're an average young woman, and all your life you've been hearing only the feminist point of view when it comes to gender politics. In other words, when it comes to gender oppression, the only examples of such you have ever heard about all your short life is that they are things that men do to women. For example, discriminating against women, abusing women, raping women, sneering at women, denying women equal pay, equal opportunities, etc. After a lifetime of this, you will unconsciously see men as the gender oppressors, since you have never heard anything to the contrary. You have never been exposed to masculist thinking and ideas that tell you that gender oppression is a two-way street, that in reality women oppress men far worse than vice versa, since women's oppression of men is continuous and lasts decades. With a lifetime gender political conditioning, in brackets, masculists would say brainwashing, it's to be expected that this young woman would feel that women are morally superior to men, since men are morally inferior to women, since it is men who do these morally inferior, these horrible things to women, especially abusing them, raping them, etc. Now that women were given equal rights to enter the professions, equal pay for equal work, the abortion right, and now have life expectancies well into the 80s, women living in economically advanced countries have poured into the workforce, since even a woman who has had her 2 kids still has a career window of half a century, so of necessity really doesn't have much choice other than to take up a career to fill up her life, or at least half a century of it, once her kids are largely off her hands. With millions of women having careers, and since the performance score distributions of the 2 sexes overlap to a large extent, in brackets, but not at the top end, where men dominate due to their greater male variance. See more on this later, in brackets. Then these young women see in their daily lives, and especially on the media, lots of powerful women who are role models for them, showing these young women that women are capable of anything, and that there's nothing in current life that stops women from achieving their full career potential other than their own inhibitions. Modern feminism preaches the above to young women, and since most of the primary and secondary school teachers are now women, even in math and the sciences at high school, these young women are pumped full of the idea that women are great, women can do anything they set their minds to do, that women can do anything that a man can do. Now, combine the above belief, pumped into them from school and from the feminist-dominated mainstream media, since the majority of journalists and media people nowadays are women, that women are men's equals when it comes to career performance, plus the sense of moral superiority that young women feel over men due to the monoconscious feminist ideas they have grown up with. Then, on balance, with this sum of equality of abilities between the sexes and the moral superiority of women over men, that it's not surprising that many young women feel, on balance, that the female sex is, in overall terms, the superior sex to men. This belief can be seen in the faces and the unconscious, unquestioned attitudes of young women today, simply by observing them in public transport, etc. This kind of unconscious arrogance takes concrete form sometimes, for example, in feminazi censorship, which is something I have personal experience with. For example, I have 3 YouTube channels. In the first, I put my master's and PhD level video courses on pure math and math physics. It has not been censored. In the second, I put, until a year ago, hundreds of my masculist videos of me reading aloud my masculist flyers, that is, essays, like this one. That channel was deleted by YouTube late 2019. In my third channel, I had a sprinkling of masculist videos, plus some other stuff. For 2 years, I've been watching where this sprinkling of masculist videos ranked in terms of the order of their presentation when one types in the search term masculism or masculist into the YouTube search window. For over a year, I was accustomed to seeing these masculist videos of mine in the top, that is, first position, that is, the first video to be listed in the list, plus a dozen other masculist videos of mine. In short, with no false modesty, I dominated that list. As of a week or so from the making of this masculist flyer, those masculist videos no longer appear. I'm not the only masculist, nor MGTOW, that's MGTOW, that's men going their own way, an important branch of the men's lib community, to have had his channel deleted from YouTube. The CEO of YouTube is Susan Wojcicki, that's W-O-J-C-I-C-K-I, pronounced Wojcicki, who is pro-feminist, as can be seen from videos of her preaching feminist values. So from a masculist viewpoint, this CEO of YouTube is pro-feminist and anti-masculist. To a masculist, this is merely two-faced hypocrisy, which makes this woman hated by the masculists. But from a monoconscious feminist point of view, her attitude towards men makes sense. She's relatively young, early 50s. From my perspective, I'm now 73. So she did not see the rise of second-wave feminism as a big shift in women's role as part of her own life experience, in brackets, as I did as a young man in my early 20s. She merely absorbed it from her environment that she inherited as a child growing up, surrounded by feminist-dominated gender politics and hearing nothing about masculinist ideas. So by definition, she is, of necessity, monoconscious. If you're a monoconscious feminist and feel angry at how men oppress women and you know nothing about masculinist ideas, then it's not surprising that you react angrily at men who lash out at women for women's oppression of men. Because to you, any criticism of women by men, as taught to you by feminism, is just more proof to you that men are the enemy of women, that men oppress women, that men are to be hated if they treat women this way. So such women, that is, women like Suzanne Wojcicki, feel fully justified in hurting men by, for example, deleting their channels. So when, finally, these monoconscious feminists are exposed to the core idea of the masculist, perhaps by being confronted by angry masculist colleagues in the workplace, or better still, by their boyfriends ditching them for their monoconscious bigotry, then they will be forced to admit that there's a substantial number of men out there who hold masculist views, who do not take kindly in the least to expression of monoconscious feminist views and actions, especially when they appear so two-faced hypocritical to masculists, for example, promoting feminist channels and deleting masculist channels. To masculists, this monoconscious feminism is hated. It's profoundly hypocritical, bigoted, dumb, ignorant, close-minded, and spat at. As the number of masculists and MGTOWs keeps growing, millions of young women are going to be dumped by quality young men, the ones young women really want to mate with, due to the superior DNA of such men that young women want for their kids. And this dumping is going to hurt them profoundly as it dawns on them that their monoconscious feminist beliefs are the root cause of their being dumped. This extremely painful rejection by the man a monoconscious feministed woman hoped to be the father of her children will cause her to think very hard about the angry, hateful words that her masculinist boyfriend, or ex-boyfriend, hurled at her. For example, this is a quote, a long diatribe. "You're a monoconscious feminazi. You know nothing about masculism. You see gender politics as a one-way street, that it's only men who are the gender oppressors. You know nothing about how women oppress men with their financial parasitism, their manslavery, their fluffy feminist hypocrisy in the divorce courts, their many decades-lasting gender crimes against men, etc. You feminazis don't give a shit about men. You see us as oppressors, to be abused and robbed, especially in the fluffy feminist-controlled divorce courts, where you women have made divorce so toxic for men that 2/3 of young men like me have now decided not to marry, not to have kids, because we refuse to face the odds of 1 chance in 4 of being financially massacred and have our lives ruined by some hated, monoconscious, fluffy feminist judge or lawyer in the divorce courts who sees men in her typical monoconscious feminazi way as toxic. So he should be seen as a man to be robbed and abused, forced to lose custody of his kids, his house, half his wealth, made to pay for his kids he will barely see, and often alimony to his ex-wife, so she can continue to parasite off his money for the rest of her fat, parasitic life. Fuck that. And fuck you, or better still, that no one fuck you, so that you rot on the shelf. Young men like me, who have been exposed to masculists and MGTOW ideas, are really angry now, and refuse to be treated as cash machines by fluffy parasite vermin. You women are going to feel that you've been hit by a bus when masculist and MGTOW ideas spread through the culture in the 2020s, the way the second wave feminism spread through the culture in the late 60s and 70s, when women had the pill and had decades of their lives in which to work. Now it's our turn. It's men's turn to liberate ourselves. We will force you women to FIP up, in brackets, FIP equals financially independent person. close brackets, to bother to get a career-competent education so the woman can be a real FIP as an adult, pulling her own financial weight and not expecting fluffy style, in brackets, fluffy equals traditional woman who expects to be able to parasite off the money and labour of a man, close brackets, to manslave him, sexploit him, abuse him. This is the end of part 1.